Hello YouTube! Today in the Naughty Librarian I'm going to be reviewing and recapping Season 1, Episode 1 of Interview with the Vampire. I am very excited to watch this show. I mean, let's be real. Disclaimer here. Obviously the show is completely its own thing, different from the books. There's so many differences that frankly it's its own thing at this point. At the very least, it's going to be entertaining. It's going to be dramatic. It's going to have vampire stuff. It's going to be gory. So I'm like, it's going to be like a great Halloween pick of a show. And personally, I've read at least the first 5 books of this series, so I feel like I have enough knowledge to come in here and point out the differences between the book and the show with some amount of accuracy. So let's get into this. The episode starts with Daniel, and he's a reporter, and he was actually the original reporter back in the 70s of, Interview with the Vampire, the original Interview with the Vampire. And now we're in the present day, the pandemic era. They do reference the pandemic in this episode. And they're meeting again. And I love that idea. I love a second interview with the vampire because so much has happened since they last spoke. So it's like going in with one amount of knowledge and then coming back with all of this other knowledge. So I think that's a great idea. However, in the books, Daniel does become a vampire, but he becomes a vampire back in the 80s. He would not be this old if you're doing it canon with the books. Daniel became vampire boyfriends with Armand, and Armand changed him into a vampire. And that happened in Queen of the Damned, so book 3. Another major difference here is that Louie's just awake during the daytime. I love that he has his modern vampire apartment, so he has all the UV filters on the windows and stuff so he can still see outside during daytime and not get burned by the sun. But they're not usually awake during the daytime. They usually have to fall asleep. They're kind of dead during the daytime. So in this one, they're awake. I like that. Why spend half the time with them sleeping? Let them be awake during the daytime. Daniel and Louie start their re-interview process, and they go back to when Louie was becoming a vampire, and this is in the year 1910. Obviously, big difference from the books. The books, it's 1790s, so obviously it's 120 years later. It's a big time jump. And there's all the differences with Louie as a character himself, because in this one, Louie, to put it frankly, he's a pimp. He runs a lot of brothels and stuff. He's kind of an entrepreneur, I think is the nice way of saying it. He's a pimp. And he's Creole. It's a completely different century, so so many differences already that it completely changes the lens we're viewing this relationship in. But I like that. It's new fertile ground for storytelling, so I'm totally cool with this. I think it's a good direction to go. And we also meet Louie's family. He has a really sweet sister. He has a mom. He's kind of the breadwinner for the family. He's the one taking care of everybody, and he's quite successful. But it puts a lot of weight on his shoulders. He's got oldest brother syndrome. And they even include his youngest brother, who, book accurate with this. The brother was always crazy religious. I mean, there's a mental disorder here, obviously, and a lot of Catholicism combined into one character, and that's book accurate. So already I'm oh no, that's a dead brother walking. And I also noticed they made reference to the Mayfair Witches, which I also just found out they're making a show out of as well. And the Mayfair Witches is another, it's kind of a spin-off series from Vampire Chronicles because they happen in the same universe, but they're 2 different series. And I am interested in reading those. I haven't read them yet, but I know they mentioned the Mayfair Witches, which I thought was really cool. Okay, so let's get into the juicy stuff. So let's start with Lestat and Louie finally meeting each other. So they meet at this brothel, and, Lestat is there, full-on Miss to Steal Your Girl, Brat Prince extraordinaire mode. And in the books, he gets called the Brat Prince quite a bit, which makes sense for his personality. He just doesn't know when to stop and doesn't have a sense of danger. So Lestat's there, kind of Miss to Steal Your Girl to Louie, obviously. Louie is perturbed by this, but also Lestat is very attractive. So he's having a lot of conflicting feelings. And then from that point forward, that they keep meeting. And it makes sense for Lestat's character, because Lestat gets obsessed with things very easily. And he is hunted prey for months before he like strikes, because he just likes observing and stuff. And like this version of Louis is totally the kind of person Lestat would be obsessed with. Like, oh my gosh, like the brashness, the like brooding nature, the secrets, like, oh, he would be so into that. Like he would be totally obsessed. And he is in here too. They keep like meeting each other, and obviously I think Lestat is like stalking him a bit. But like the other side of this coin is like he keeps doing like his demonry tricks. Like he has like mind control, and in the show like he kind of stops time, and I don't know if he's necessarily stopping time or he's changing everyone's perception of time. But yeah, like for some reason, Louis seems surprisingly chill with this. He's like, "All right, I'm talking to a literal demon. Let's play cards." Like, you know, he's surprisingly chill. He should have probably stopped and asked for a question or two, but nope, this just keeps going. However, cheating at cards does foster a good friendship. So now they're friends. They hang out all over the city. They go to like operas. They're just doing like bro time 1910 edition. There's even a makeover. Like, I love that. Like, Louis even brings Lestat home to meet his family and everything, and like, you know, it like bringing a vampire to dinner doesn't necessarily sound like it's gonna go well, and like it doesn't. It goes like as well as it could in this situation. Like basically all we learn from this like scene is that like, wow, Lestat, you need to work out your childhood trauma in like more successful ways than this. But like, it's book accurate like trauma that Lestat did have. He did want to be a priest in the books. He did have like a really vile father and brothers and stuff who were just like vulgar and boorish. And yeah, that's book accurate. You know, probably, you know, dinner with your friend's family is not the time to work out those demons though. And Lestat even references Nicky, who was his first boyfriend from back in Paris with the violin. So like there's a lot of little book accurate things we're getting from Lestat's point of view that weren't in book one. Lestat's kind of a mystery a bit in book one. Mind you, Louis is the narrator, and he might be a bit of an unreliable narrator. It's very one-sided telling of the story. Like Lestat's not there to provide context or things. So just know that going in, Louis might be a bit one-sided in his storytelling abilities, but I really like all the little book like Easter eggs. Here's where things get spicy, right? So we have Lestat, Louis, and Lily. Lily is her sex worker that Louis is like obsessed with, and like Lestat like brings her. And like it's very obviously like fucking by proxy. Like, oh no, we're not doing something gay. We have a woman involved. Like, you know, one of those. Because like Lestat is straight up, I fucking Louis. Like it's like a thing. And then, you know, I was like, okay, I could get into like this three-way dynamic. Let's go. And then I'm like, oh wait, no, they're just gonna do it. And I was like, yes, go for it all the way. And I feel like for people who've read the books, like this is very satisfying because like in the books, vampires don't ever have sex. There's no vampire sex in the books, none at all. I think it was described as like they just don't have sex because their version of sex is killing, and they're horny for murder basically in the books. So like seeing them actually have sex is like a new fun experience because we all wanted to see it. Like, let's be real, they're vampire boyfriends. We wanted to see this for a long time, but it's not book accurate. They don't actually have sex in the books. And also Lestat is flying, which is kind of book accurate, but not accurate until book 3, Queen of the Damned. The Queen of the Damned, Akasha, teaches him how to fly. So I don't know what chronology they're using here, if like that had already happened, because in the books it happens in the 1980s. So I don't know if that's already happened yet, but he can fly now. So I'm like, wow, we're advanced studies. So after Louis and Lestat are very intimate with each other because like Lestat takes a quick little sip out of Louis, and Louis, you know, he basically catches a lot of feels and runs off scared. He's like, nope, I'm not like emotionally prepared to handle this level of intimacy. So he runs off. It's time for sister's wedding. And there's like the sweetest brothers tap dance number. And I was like, yes, throw that in. I love that. I love that for them. So there's a wedding tap dance. Love that. And like I said earlier, when I met the brother in the show, and this was a book accurate brother, I was like, oh, this is a dead brother walking. As soon as they went on the roof, I was like, oh no, this is how it happens in the book. Oh no. And like, yeah. So brother walks off the roof and sadly falls to his death. And like a little different in the book, because in the book Louis blames himself a lot more because they had gotten into an argument before it happened, and that's kind of why the brother did it. This one, I think like the brother's mental problems may have gotten the best of him in this moment, which makes it all the more traumatic, I think, for Louis, because they had such a sweet moment. They're watching the sunrise. He says like, I love you, brother. And for that to happen right afterward. And it's just, that's, wow, that's like an emotional punch to the stomach. Like, whew. So they're having the funeral for his brother, and Lestat shows up, and like, girl, this is not the time or place for your drama, because like Louis had been ignoring Lestat. He caught feels and got scared. And like Lestat showing up at the funeral to start shit with Louis, bro, not the time. Like, dick move. Like, I mean, it checks with Lestat's character. He would do that, but like, oh my gosh, this is not how you like make yourself attractive to somebody. He's never gonna learn. And like, this is just kind of going to show the toxic nature of like Lestat and Louis' relationship, especially in Interview with the Vampire. We get more details on it later in other books where it kind of explains more of the dynamic between them. And I mean, they're together in the books. Like, I'm in book 5 and they're still together. So they get back together eventually. They're still vampire boyfriends, like hundreds of years later. So, you know, like I'm saying, Louis is a bit one-sided in his storytelling, so it might not be 100% accurate as to what actually happened. This is Louis' version of events, but their relationship is super toxic at first, I will admit. Lestat can't be told no, and he wants Louis. Like, he wants him, and he will stop at nothing to have Louis. And he's like doing way evil stuff. Like, he ate Lily, the sex worker Lily that we met. Like, Lestat killed her, and we're like, why? Like, you find out in the books, like, Lestat often has reasons for doing what he does, and a lot of the times his main food source are bad people. He doesn't try actively to kill good people. So maybe Miss Lily had something else going on in her backstory, because he did, you know, in the books he does go after several sex workers, but they were also doing bad things to people. They weren't just like, I'm a sex worker and a nice person. No, they were bad people. So I don't know if there's a secret here we're gonna find out about Lily, but who knows? I don't know. It's just kind of like building this toxic foundation of their relationship. And honestly, I don't know if I like it, because they're toxic enough on their own, but like, I feel like they're making the Lestat-Louis relationship into like a Dracula-Renfield relationship, which is like, I don't know. I don't really know how I feel about that right now. It's interesting storytelling, but for me, I'm just like, I don't like this. Because like, basically Lestat is driving Louis crazy. He won't get out of his head. He has telepathy. So he's just like constantly in his head. And it leads to like the most dramatic part of this whole episode, where it's in a church, this Catholic church. And Lestat, so damn dramatic. Louis is in there like pouring his soul out to this priest in a confessional booth, just like freaking the fuck out, because like there's this guy talking in his head. Like, I don't blame Louis for being freaked out. And Lestat shows up and just like starts setting things on fire in the church. He kills the priest. Like, holy mackerel, he punched a hole through a priest's head. Like, what? Like, I wasn't expecting the level of gore I got in this episode, because like, yowza, he punched a hole through a guy's head, like on camera. And I was like, yikes. So, yeah, very dramatic. And they have this big, like, you know, fight or whatever. And I did notice this one really interesting detail that I have to give credit where credit's due to production staff. But like, when like Lestat and Louis are having like their big moment when they're talking about it, and like Lestat's like, let me make you into a vampire, I could take all this pain away. Like, his pupils are enormous, like they're so blown out. And as he's talking and like coming down from like this feeding frenzy, his pupils start constricting. And I thought that was so interesting, because it's kind of making like that frenzy into like a drug euphoria state. And I was like, that's such an interesting little detail, and maybe just I picked up on it, but I thought that was really cool. And like the whole scene between them, mind you, there is a fire and 2 dead priests bleeding everywhere. And like, Lestat is like making this into a love scene. He's like, Louis, I love you. I'm obsessed with you. we should be vampire boyfriends. I will make everything better in your life. You need to be with me. It's also kind of toxic, but the way they're doing it, it's so romantic. And I think Louis is at a very vulnerable state at the moment where his brother just died. He's blaming himself. He has a lot of pain and guilt, and especially even just about being a gay man in 1910. So he's kind of preying on all of those insecurities. And exactly what Louis needed to hear right then was that I love you, I see you, and there's nothing wrong with you. So, basically, this moment was picked perfectly by Lestat, although it seems very kind of, I'm jumping the gun on this, but eventually, like, Louis like, okay, go for it, turn me into one. And so Lestat makes Louis a vampire in a burning church in front of 2 dead priests. Like, so dramatic. So that's episode 1, everybody. Full thing. Overall, I had a really good time with it. I love the new time period. I like all the changes they made to the story. I find it interesting. So I feel like they're still being faithful to, the source material, but they're putting their own spin on it, which I think is great for an adaptation, because doing it just 100% by the book, not going to be as fun. Do something cool and original with it. So far, so good. I'm having like a lovely time with this. I'm very excited to keep going with the series. So I will be back next week for episode 2. And yeah, let me know in the comments down below. What did you think about the episode? Are you interested in continuing on with this series? Let me know in the comments. If you like this video, make sure you give it a like. And if you want to see more videos, make sure you subscribe. And if you want cool exclusive content, you can consider becoming a patron or a channel member. The links for that are in the description down below. And on that note, I will see you guys soon. Bye!